Week 4, Lesson 4, Public Domain Heroes. I would say that between 1940 and 1945, there were more failed comic book characters created before or since, with over 700 superheroes created. Many companies stopped producing comics shortly after this time. Some got bought out, some went under, some just forgot to properly apply for copyright protection, and because of this, there are more comic book characters in public domain here than in any other time since after 1923. Now, not every character can be as popular as Superman or as loved as Captain America, and many characters can come across as uninspired by today's standards. Many are simple, some are silly, and some have even been rediscovered and given new life by today's artists. So, who are these fictional women and men fighting fictional problems to keep their fictional world safe? Well, we're going to take a quick look at a few of them. First, let's look at Daredevil. Bart Hill, better known as his alter ego Daredevil, was a mute man who had no powers. But he did have a red and blue costume and incredible courage. He was a character who got his start in Silver Streak issue number 6 in September 1940 by Lev Gleason Publications, but graduated to having his own title in July 1941. He was created by Jack Binder, but was completely redesigned by Jack Cole. Like Superman, I don't think Daredevil ever used a gun. He seemed to like to punch people a lot, and would usually use whatever was around him. Although if he had a signature weapon, it would probably be his boomerang, which he took out every other issue. Blue Streak's and later Daredevil's main arch-nemesis was the Claw, a titanic Asian monster who looked like a vampire. After Daredevil's first appearance, he battled the Claw for 5 issues, which is probably the largest superhero fight ever drawn up until that time. This happened in Blue Streak issues number 7 to 11. The fight was absolutely insane, anything goes. Giant monster takes down the city, shrinks down to human size, both villain and hero get captured, hero is fed to piranhas, girlfriend is captured and made Empress of America, let's throw planes and missiles at each other type of brawl. The epic brawl ends on a fist fight on a mountain. A few short months after that fight, Daredevil got his own magazine, which was really an anthology magazine that Daredevil headlined. In it, Daredevil would go on a huge variety of adventures. He'd fight the Claw, again, but he'd also have sword fights with ordinary criminals, and sometimes Daredevil would take a backseat to other characters. In Daredevil, issue number 6, the story is told from the point of view of a criminal who's had his brain transferred into a wolf. This was an anything-goes style of storytelling which would pop up in the late 1950s. But Daredevil was far from the only hero in this time. Now, let's look at the legendary run of Police Comics. Police Comics was an anthology comic book highlighting various characters. It was created by the publisher Quality Comics and released in August 1941. The writers and artists included Will Eisner and Jack Cole. This is the same Jack Cole who made Daredevil incredibly popular for his time, and his work on Police Comics is probably his most famous contribution to the medium. The first issues of Police Comics introduced a number of new characters, including Firebrand, the Mouthpiece, the Human Bomb, Phantom Lady, Plastic Man, and a few issues later they added another character called Manhunter. Plastic Man was by far the most popular character in the series, lasting 102 issues before the comic finally dropped his stories. Plastic Man was a criminal named Eel O'Brien who got splashed by acid when he was escaping a crime scene. Instead of slowly burning to death, the chemicals made him super flexible, being able to shape himself into any impossible shape he wants to. He escapes the police by hiding in a monastery, and the monk protects him from the law. This changed Eel O'Brien's life, and he takes on the name Plastic Man to fight crime. But he uses his real identity of Eel O'Brien to get information from criminals about upcoming crimes. The comic quickly evolved to doing a lot of slapstick action, and Plastic Man would have to come up with creative ways to defeat villains. He was so flexible that bullets just bounce off him. He's pretty much invincible as long as he's breathing air. His face and body are so flexible that he could disguise himself as anybody. He eventually got a sidekick too, Woozy Winks, who saved a witch's life and was unable to be injured thanks to a spell she cast on him. As time went on, his powers seemed to be completely forgotten, and he became a useless tag-along on Plastic Man's adventures. Later on, Will Eisner's The Spirit even started popping up as a backup feature in the comics, and the title really did a good job of mixing humor and action. The other characters weren't as successful, but I fully recommend reading these comics if you get the chance. Police Comics was very well written for its time, and the art was above average compared to all its competition. The comics have entered public domain, and scans are freely able to be read online. Police Comics tend to be overlooked by many comic fans today, probably due to the difficulty in finding physical copies. But I can honestly say that these are some of the best comics I've ever read. But not every character from this period is memorable. Let's look at the Woman in Red. Her power is that she is a woman who dresses in red. Her real identity is that of policewoman Peggy Allen. She was sick of the limitations of her job, so she dresses up in red and fought crime on her own. She uses her powers of logic and reasoning to solve mysteries. This doesn't mean that the stories are boring, just forgettable, as they're not trying to make statements or do anything new. Let's look at the Curse of Voa, for example. A wealthy American traveler says he's been cursed by a witch doctor to have the death god Voa come back to civilization with him. That night, someone in his house is killed. The police chief sends Peggy undercover as a maid to solve the mystery. She finds Voa, beats him up, and then it's revealed that Voa is just a disguise of the rich man's nephew who wanted to steal his fortune. It's a simplified mystery plot. And some things are not explained, like how Voa was shot multiple times and wasn't killed or critically injured by the bullets. Despite having a female lead, there really wasn't much to make this comic stand out. The art isn't that good, the stories are by the numbers compared to the competition, the characters are bland, and even the characters' names seem to have little thought put into it. But just because you had a simple name doesn't mean that the character is bland. First appearing in May 1940 in Big Shot Comics, issue number 1, published by Columbia Comics, The Mask, better known as radio promoter Tony Trent, was a character created by Mark Bailey. I found out very little about Mark Bailey, other than that he also did some work on Detective Comics. I'm guessing that the name is an alias, and that Mark is one of those men who kept to themselves, because I could not find anything about his personal life, including the year of his birth and potentially the year of his death. The face is a really cool design, which, much like Batman, is an ordinary man putting the mask on in order to intimidate villains. He's a suave vigilante who wears a tuxedo to go with the mask. He does his own investigation work and he strong-arms criminals into confessions. He would also occasionally use a gun, although I don't think he ever shot anyone with it. At least not until America got involved in the war. Eventually, he started to gain the trust of law enforcement, and even more impressively, Tony Trent got rid of the mask. Like many young men in America, Tony Trent joined the military and was sent to fight in the Pacific. In Big Shots, issue number 45, he lost his mask and shortly after was captured by the Japanese. The story then followed the temporary wearers of the mask until a man named General Chin Ling was killed wearing it. It turned out that General Chin Ling was coincidentally a mobster from Tony Trent's city called Chinatown Charlie. So, the soldiers thought that he had always been the mask and let him take the blame for all the mask's crimes. Tony Trent would continue his adventures for the next 42 issues as Tony Trent. He'd still put on the mask from time to time, but the focus was on the adventures of the man behind the mask. As far as I can tell, this was the first time where a character continued to headline a feature after retiring his secret identity. When did Tony give up his identity as a mask? Well, shortly after the war ended. We'll go into the reasons for that in the Week 5 videos. There are so many other great heroes from this age that have just been forgotten, and then there are some that just took up pieces from other more successful heroes. Let's look at Black Terror and Tim, because you put a lot of thought into his secret identity when you don't even bother to change the sidekick's name. First appearing in January 1941, Exciting Comics, issue number 9, by publisher Nador Comics, Black Terror was created by writer Richard E. Hughes and artist Don Gabrielson. Black Terror was the secret identity of the weak pharmacist Bob Benton. One day, Bob sees a man picking on a kid. He steps in to help, but gets knocked to the ground. The kid, named Tim, thanks him, but Bob feels humiliated that he was too weak to help. Bob hires the kid as his assistant, and they mix dangerous chemicals together. The kid screws up, and they get super strength. Bob Benton decided that he was going to dress in a dark, intimidating costume and fight crime. Apparently, he's super strong, but if you catch him off guard, he can be knocked out. So, the thug's time to a train track. Thankfully, Tim was there for the Black Terror's origin story. He gets super strength too, and saves the Black Terror, who uses the opportunity to show that he's more powerful than a locomotive. To save his secret identity, Black Terror pretends to be a weakling, which just upsets his girlfriend, Jean Starr, who wishes that her boyfriend, Bob Benton, was just as strong and brave as the Black Terror. So, what we have here is Nador Comics learning from the success of DC Comics by mixing attributes of DC Comics' most successful heroes to create a property that would hopefully compete with them. Black Terror had Superman's famous strength, but he was just an ordinary human who used the power of science to get it. He had Superman's dual identity, where he pretended to be a weak nobody, but could really beat up anyone he came across. He had a girl who was like Lois Lane. She just wished that the man in her life was more like the costumed hero that kept popping up around her. He also had aspects of Batman. He was a scientist, he had a younger partner, he fought street-level crime, and he had a dark costume. This was a character that was designed to be successful, but most people today have probably never heard of him. Now, all the heroes that we've shown you here are just a very select sample of what's available out there. There are hundreds of heroes from this period of comics that have been unused for decades and are just waiting to be discovered by new fans, writers, and artists. Take a look at some of the public domain databases and see if you can find any amazing stories or characters that time might have forgotten. Questions to contemplate. Why do you think the heroes like Batman, Superman, Captain America, and Wonder Woman survived for decades, while almost all the heroes looked at in this video have failed? About halfway through his career, the Mask retired his civilian identity and continued to take up his adventures as Tony Trent. Can you think of another character in fiction who's made a similar decision and stuck with it? Can you think of what are some other 20th century characters not mentioned here who are now in public domain?